The shadow of integrity. Adrenaline had a metallic taste on Elias Thorne's tongue as he pressed palms and flashed smiles at voters. Rain fell against the asphalt, soaking newspapers and polished shoes, a muffled rustle beneath every step. The scent of fresh paper and ink dominated the air in the City Hall rooms, a fragrance that promised order and renewal. He was young, or so he appeared. His eyes still betrayed a flicker of fear, a tick hidden behind the smile. "I am the new man," he had told the crowd, and for a moment, even he had believed it. Behind the scenes, however, memory had teeth. A handshake with an old businessman, the sound of a slamming door, and the metallic sensation of a non-existent bullet between his fingers. That memory didn't have a name yet, but it would return. Thorne took the stage, microphones, flashes, applause. The smell of sweat and coffee mingled with the rain. Everything was perfect, everything was controlled. Integrity felt like a brand new suit, crisp and unworn. The box arrived without warning, old wood, dust, and the acrid stench of mold. Inside, a blackened bullet and a photograph that burned between his fingers. Thorne stared at the young face, his own face, back when he was a lawyer. He was covering up a manslaughter charge for a friend, a front man for Victor Vane. The metallic taste of panic returned. His stomach tightened, his hands shook. It was no longer possible to deny it. The past had found a way to knock on his door. Every document he had signed to expose corruption now carried a different weight. The investigation, the morality, the promise of a clean slate, it all shattered like thin glass. Thorne realized that purity was an illusion reserved for those with nothing to lose. The greenhouse was a humid furnace, thick with the smell of wet earth and orchids of impossible, grotesque colors. The sticky air clung to skin and clothes, while the muffled drumming of rain against the glass filled the silence. Victor Vane was waiting for him, smiling. He didn't threaten. He didn't shout. He simply showed how their lives were branches of the same rotten tree. "You still don't get it," he said, his voice soft, calm, terrible. "You betrayed yourself a long time ago. You just didn't know it yet." Thorne clenched his fists, feeling the veins pulse in his temples. The suffocating beauty of the orchids became unbearable, a symbol of corrupted perfection. There was no choice left. To face Vane meant either betraying himself or destroying everything he had built. The nights were sleepless. Nervous tics grew beneath his skin. Every meal tasted like ash. Alcohol burned like a reminder of his compromises. Thorne betrayed allies, friends, and trusted aides. Every move was calculated, precise, necessary. Memories of the young lawyer returned to haunt him, brief flashes of what he could have done, of what he had closed his eyes to avoid seeing. The city, the investigation, the newspapers, it all turned to ash in his hands. But there was no other path. Every decision was painful, every compromise hollowed him out from the inside. He wasn't changing by choice. He was changing because he could no longer remain who he was. On the day of the televised speech, Thorne stepped onto the stage with sweaty palms. The hum of neon lights and microphones filled the room. He knew every word he'd spoken, yet he trembled. "Victor Vane will serve as our special consultant," he said, his voice steady. There was no choice. Purity had been nothing but thin glass, and now it had shattered. He looked at his own image in the TV monitor. Cold skin, the eyes of a stranger. The betrayal was complete. It didn't surprise him. It convinced him. Morality hadn't been violated, it had been rendered inevitable by reality. Thorne stood alone in the muffled silence of the studio. The rain continued to beat against the glass, like a metronome for his damnation. Had he won? Had he lost? The answer was no longer necessary. It was simply what had to be. Thorne's purity was an illusion shattered by the truth. At what point does a necessary lie become the only truth you have left?